If you woke up today thinking your biggest problem was the price of a gallon of gas or the monthly cost of your mortgage, you are looking at the wrong map. While the media is busy dissecting political speeches, a silent surgical severing of the most critical artery in the Western world just took place. It wasn't an act of war by an overseas adversary, it was a choice made by our closest neighbor. Before this video reaches the 10-minute mark, I'm going to show you exactly how a single signature in Ottawa has effectively placed a chokehold on every major U.S. market, from the grocery aisles in Ohio to the tech hubs in Texas. But first, you need to ask yourself one question. What happens to a superpower when its gas tank, its pantry, and its power grid are all locked from the outside? This is the Great Supply Chain Betrayal. It is the moment where the poor special relationship between the United States and Canada didn't just crack, it shattered under the weight of a new, ruthless economic reality. For decades, the border between these two nations was the most efficient machine in human history. It moved $2 billion in goods every single day. It was the invisible foundation of your standard of living. But that machine has been reprogrammed. Trump's final order was designed to bring the machine home, to force a reset that favored American soil. Instead, it triggered a defiance that no one in Washington's war rooms accurately predicted. If this makes you feel a sense of sudden vulnerability, that reaction is not just valid, it is necessary. You are sensing the shift of the default setting. We have lived in an era where available was a guarantee. We are entering an era where available is a leverage point. In the next few minutes, I will deconstruct the 3 specific choke points Canada is now using to paralyze U.S. industry, and why your local supermarket is about to become the front line of a battle you didn't even know was being fought. If you want to understand how to protect your family's resources before the shelves reflect the data, you need to stay until the final chapter of this breakdown. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because in a world of collapsing supply chains, information is the only currency that doesn't devalue. Let's look at the first domino. The betrayal didn't start with a headline. It started with a quiet shift in energy protocols. Most Americans don't realize that Canada is the largest supplier of energy to the United States, more than all OPEC nations combined. When the defiance began, it wasn't a total shutoff. It was a regulatory slowdown for the sake of internal security. In the language of high-level economics, that is a polite way of saying, we are holding your electricity and oil hostage. Think about your daily life. Every product you touch, every mile you drive, every light you flip on is subsidized by this cross-border flow. By defying the order to align with U.S. trade mandates, Canada has effectively turned off the discount. They are no longer the friendly gas station next door. They are the landlord who just changed the locks while you were out for dinner. This isn't just about politics. This is about the fundamental survival of the American industrial complex. When the supply chain is betrayed, the impact isn't felt in the stock market first. It's felt in the lead times. It's the parts for your car that are suddenly back-ordered indefinitely. It's the specialized chemicals for U.S. agriculture that are stuck in transit. We are watching the intentional paralysis of a giant, and the giant is us. The machine is in stage 2 of a 4-stage collapse pattern, and if you aren't watching the north, you are blind to the coming storm. To understand the depth of this betrayal, we have to look past the political theater and into the cold, hard logic of industrial dependency. Canada didn't just say no to an executive order. They weaponized the very infrastructure that the U.S. has spent 50 years integrating. Think of the Great Lakes region not as a border, but as a single, massive heart. On one side, you have the American manufacturing muscle. On the other, you have the Canadian raw materials and energy. Trump's final order was an attempt to renegotiate the terms of this heart's beat. He demanded a level of compliance that Ottawa viewed as an existential threat to their sovereignty. Their response was a masterclass in economic guerrilla warfare. They didn't block the roads. They didn't seize assets. They simply implemented what I call the friction protocol. By adding layers of environmental compliance and security inspections to every truck crossing the Ambassador Bridge, they created a 48-hour delay where there used to be a 4-minute flow. In the world of just-in-time manufacturing, a 48-hour delay is a death sentence. Within 72 hours of this defiance, assembly lines in Michigan and Ohio began to go dark. This is the surgical precision of the betrayal. It paralyzes the U.S. markets without firing a single shot, using the very bureaucracy that was supposed to protect trade. Why does this matter to you specifically? Because the U.S. economy is a high-speed train that cannot handle a sudden stop. Our entire financial system is built on the assumption of frictionless movement. When Canada defies an order and slows that movement, they aren't just hurting corporations, they are inflating your life. Every hour a truck sits at the border is an hour of cost added to the eggs in your fridge and the lumber for your home. But there is a deeper layer here. This defiance is being watched by the rest of the world. It is a signal that the U.S. can be defied by its own shadow. The economic history of the English-speaking world is defined by these moments of internal fracturing. From the Boston Tea Party to the trade wars of the 1930s, whenever the core supply chain is used as a political weapon, the result is always a massive transfer of wealth. What we are seeing now is the beginning of that transfer. Canada is betting that the U.S. is too dependent to retaliate effectively. They are betting that our markets will scream louder than our politicians. And so far, the markets are doing exactly that. The volatility we are seeing in the Dow and the NASDAQ isn't just market nerves. It is the sound of the world's most powerful economy realizing it no longer controls its own inputs. The cultural connection here is profound. For over a century, the U.S. and Canada shared a vision of a unified North American powerhouse. We fought wars together, we built the internet together, and we fed the world together. To see this defiance now is to witness the death of an era. It is a psychological shock to the American public who always viewed Canada as the safe neighbor. Now, that safety has been replaced by a calculated, cold-blooded economic strategy. They aren't just protecting their markets, they are forcing a new global alignment where the U.S. is no longer the sole director of the play. If you think this will blow over in a week, you don't understand the 4-stage pattern of monetary resets. We are moving into the stage where access becomes more important than a price. As we reach the final stage of this analysis, we have to look at the end game. What happens when the defiance becomes the new status quo? Trump's order was meant to be a plus final order, a definitive line in the sand to bring industrial dominance back to the states. But when Canada crossed that line, they didn't just break a rule, they proved the line was an illusion. This has paralyzed U.S. markets because the markets hate uncertainty more than they hate bad news. The uncertainty now is, who actually runs the North American economy? If Canada continues to hold the line on these supply chain choke points, the U.S. will be forced into one of two paths. Either a humiliating climb down that signals the end of American trade hegemony, or a radical, painful decoupling that will take a decade and trillions of dollars to complete. In either scenario, the person who pays the bill is you. The supply chain betrayal is effectively a hidden tax on every American citizen. It is a tax on your mobility, a tax on your diet, and a tax on your future. The system isn't breaking. It is being re-engineered to operate without the default setting of American dominance. This brings us to the most critical reflection of all. We often talk about crises as if they are temporary storms, but the betrayal we are witnessing is a permanent climate change for the global economy. The English-speaking world, which has led the global order for 2 centuries, is cannibalizing itself. While we argue over borders and orders, the very gears of our prosperity are grinding to a halt. You need to recognize what stage the machine is in. This isn't the time for panic, but it is the time for a rational, cold-eyed assessment of your dependencies. Where does your energy come from? Where does your food come from? If the answer involves a special relationship that is currently in flames, you are at risk. The window to prepare for the full impact of this paralysis is closing. It doesn't close with a countdown. It closes the moment the crowd finally realizes the temporary delays are the new reality. By then, the best pricing and the easiest access will be gone. The Great Supply Chain Betrayal is your warning shot. It is the last domino you'll be allowed to see before the system makes its final move to adjust to this new fractured world. If this deep dive has helped you see the invisible lines of power and profit that actually run our world, then you have already taken the first step toward resilience. This channel is dedicated to being the global reference for these high-stakes economic shifts, providing the detail and persuasion you won't find on the evening news. Don't let the next shift catch you off guard. Subscribe, share this analysis with those who still believe the old maps are accurate, and leave a comment below. How has the rising cost of this invisible supply chain already hit your hometown? We are watching the machine, and we will be here to map its next move. Until then, stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, when the supply chain is the weapon, your only shield is the truth.